at 12:49 on a Thursday afternoon in the Philippine Sea, approximately 340 nautical miles east of Luzon, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye from USS Ronald Reagan's embarked air wing acquired a single airborne contact on the AN/APY-9 radar at a range of 312 nautical miles, bearing 287. The contact was climbing through 18,000 feet, heading 092 degrees magnetic, airspeed approximately 470 knots. The contact classification came back within 12 seconds. Plan H-6K, probable weapons loadout based on radar cross-section analysis and known sortie patterns from the originating airbase. The E-2D controller noted the contact in the tactical picture and reported it to the battle group over the data link. He did this with the measured professionalism of someone who has tracked H-6K sorties before, which he had, twice in the previous deployment cycle and once more in this one. The H-6K flew these routes with sufficient regularity that the E-2D crew kept a running assessment of the sortie pattern in a spreadsheet that the senior controller updated between watches. The spreadsheet had a column for expected closest point of approach, a column for observed emission activity, and a column labeled "Anything New This Time?", which, until today, had been empty for 3 consecutive sorties. Today, the column would not be empty. The Reagan's Air Wing Operations Officer was informed of the contact at 12:51. 2 F-35Cs from the embarked strike fighter squadron were already airborne on a combat air patrol station 40 nautical miles ahead of the carrier. They were informed of the contact at 12:53 and given a vector. The vector placed them on an intercept course that would bring them to the H-6K's altitude and general position approximately 23 minutes before the H-6K reached the closest point of approach to the carrier battle group. The clouds over that sector of the Philippine Sea that afternoon were a broken overcast layer running at approximately 14,000 feet, with clear air above. The F-35Cs climbed above the overcast and held their station. They were invisible. This is not a metaphor. The F-35C's radar cross-section is approximately equivalent to a large bird or a small metal sphere, depending on aspect angle and frequency. Against a detection system that has not been cued to look in a specific location, at a specific altitude, at a specific time, an F-35C in cruise configuration in the Philippine Sea is, for practical operational purposes, not there. The H-6K's onboard radar would not find them unless the pilots chose to be found. The aviation planning staff had spent the previous several days preparing this sortie. The H-6K was not simply flying past. It was conducting what Beijing's aviation doctrine describes as a maritime domain awareness patrol in coordination with a show of force element, a calculated combination of intelligence collection and political signaling designed to communicate to U.S. forces in the Philippine Sea and to the regional audience observing carefully that planned long-range aviation could operate at will in waters adjacent to U.S. carrier operations. The H-6K would approach to within demonstration range of the Reagan battle group, activate its targeting sensors to demonstrate the capability to acquire the carrier and return home. Chinese state media would receive the imagery. The message would be unmistakable. Before writing about what the H-6K brought to this demonstration, it is worth being precise about what the H-6K actually is, because accuracy matters more than dramatic simplification on this subject. The H-6K is China's primary long-range maritime strike aircraft. Its airframe lineage traces to the Soviet Tupolev Tu-16 Badger of the 1950s. This fact is frequently cited as grounds for dismissal, and that dismissal is incorrect. The H-6K is not a 1950s aircraft with new paint. It is a substantially re-engineered platform with Russian D-30KP-2 turbofan engines that replaced the original turbojet installation, a modern glass cockpit, digital avionics, and an electronic system suite that has no meaningful relationship to its Soviet ancestor. The fuselage geometry is old. Everything inside it that matters for the mission it was built to perform is not. An H-6K at 470 knots carrying 6 YJ-12 missiles represents a genuine, documented threat to surface combatants at ranges exceeding 500 kilometers. Naval planners in Washington discuss the H-6K with appropriate seriousness. This script will do the same. The YJ-12 missile, each H-6K carries up to 6 of them externally, is where the genuine concern lives. It is a supersonic anti-ship cruise missile with a ramjet propulsion system, a terminal sprint phase that can exceed Mach 3, and a guidance system that combines inertial navigation, active radar homing, and, in later variants, electro-optical terminal guidance. At Mach 3 in the terminal phase, it is a genuinely difficult intercept problem for any shipborne defensive system. At the ranges, it can be employed from the H-6K. It puts every surface combatant in the Western Pacific in a targeting geometry that naval architects are still working through. The humor in this story is not about the H-6K's airframe age or the YJ-12's capability. The humor is about something else entirely. Let us go back to the carrier. USS Ronald Reagan is a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. She displaces approximately 100,000 tons at full load, operates a wing of approximately 75 aircraft, and represents approximately $13 billion in platform cost before you begin counting the aircraft, the crew, the strike group escorts, or the logistical infrastructure that keeps the entire enterprise operational. The Reagan battle group on this Thursday afternoon included 2 Arleigh Burke destroyers, 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser, and the E-2D that had been tracking the H-6K since 1249 from 312 nautical miles away. The E-2D alone costs approximately $230 million. The battle group's combined radar and sensor coverage extended in an overlapping dome that, at altitude against a large contact like an H-6K, had an effective detection range of several hundred nautical miles in every direction. The H-6K crew knew they would be detected. This was by design. You do not conduct a show of force mission and hope to sneak past the audience. The crew expected to be tracked by the battle group sensors from the moment they entered the radar envelope. They expected an intercept. They expected F/A-18 Super Hornets, the standard carrier-based fighter that has been conducting these intercepts for 2 decades, to appear on their wing at visual range, photograph them, and shadow them through the closest point of approach. This is the routine. Both sides understand the routine. The planned crew had flown it before. They had not previously flown it against an F-35C. The AN/APG 81 active electronically scanned array radar in the F-35C was tracking the H-6K from the moment the 2 aircraft were vectored onto intercept geometry. The H-6K's own radar detection systems, the defensive warning suite designed to alert the crew when they are being tracked by airborne fire control radars, was, in the later part of the transit, receiving no meaningful signal from the F-35Cs. This is not a failure of the H-6K's warning system. The F-35C was not using its radar in a way that produced returns. The H-6K's warning system was calibrated to register as a threat. The F-35C was, from the H-6K crew's electronic perspective, quiet. Still there. Still tracking. Completely invisible. At 14:08, the two F-35Cs were approximately 1 nautical mile off the H-6K's port wing, at matched altitude in cruise configuration, having been there for approximately 15 minutes. One of the pilots noted to his wingman on the interflight frequency that the H-6K crew's cockpit was visible from this range on a clear day, and that they appeared to be eating from thermoses. This observation was made with the dry, descriptive accuracy of someone watching an event that is simultaneously routine and vaguely absurd. His wingman acknowledged. They continued tracking. Here is the vulnerability window, because this story requires one, and this one was real. Between 1423 and 1434, a line of convective weather cells moving northeast through the southern Philippine Sea created a degraded radar coverage sector in the battle group's tracking geometry. The specific geometry involved the interaction between the E-2D's look-down capability, the convective cell's reflectivity at certain altitudes, and the surface clutter returns from the weather system's precipitation bands. During those 11 minutes, the battle group's tracking confidence on a contact flying below 2,000 feet on a bearing approximately 15 degrees south of the H-6K's actual track would have been meaningfully reduced. Not eliminated. Reduced. The H-6K was not on that bearing. It was not below 2,000 feet. It was at altitude on its planned track, flying the demonstration route its crew had been briefed. The degraded coverage sector was not on the H-6K's route, and the H-6K crew did not know the sector existed. But the gap was there, and it was in the battle group's coverage picture. And for 11 minutes the battle group was tracking the H-6K with the steady professionalism of a group that knew exactly where the bomber was, knew the coverage gap existed to the south, and was watching both simultaneously. The E-2D controller described the 11 minutes later as uneventful. This is accurate. They were also the only 11 minutes of the afternoon where the tactical picture had more than one variable worth monitoring. At 1434, the weather system moved northeast, and the coverage gap closed. The H-6K was still on its track, still at altitude, still being watched by F-35Cs, whose presence it had not detected. The thermoses, apparently, had been put away. At 1447, 23 minutes after the F-35Cs first took up their station off the H-6K's wing, the lead pilot made a decision. He selected afterburner for approximately 3 seconds, executing an acceleration that brought him from cruise speed to slightly above the H-6K's airspeed in the time it takes to read this sentence. He passed the H-6K's cockpit at approximately 60 feet of lateral separation and pulled into a climb. His wingman, maintaining station on the opposite side, became visible to the H-6K crew at the same moment. The two aircraft appearing simultaneously from both sides in what is, in the vocabulary of military aviation, described as an identification maneuver, and is, in the vocabulary of everyone else, described as a rather pointed hello. The H-6K crew's initial reaction to the appearance of two F-35Cs at 60 feet of separation after 23 minutes of undetected proximity was logged by the intelligence warfare officer on the Reagan through the H-6K's communication intercepts. The crew's communications in the 30 seconds following the F-35C identification went out on a frequency that was being collected. The intelligence warfare officer did not include the content verbatim in the unclassified section of his report. He noted in the summary field that the crew's communications indicated surprise at the duration of undetected escort rather than at the intercept itself. He then noted, with the precision of a professional who chooses his words carefully in official documentation, that this was an accurate assessment of the situation. Now, let us discuss what the AN/SLQ-32 and the E-2D's collection systems had been doing during the 94 minutes between initial contact at 12:49 and the F-35C identification at 14:47, because this is the part of the story that never appears in Chinese state media. The H-6K's navigation and targeting radar had been active since approximately 13:14, when the aircraft entered what its crew assessed as the outer boundary of the operational approach zone and began the sensor employment sequence. The H-6K carries a surface search and targeting radar, a modified system derived from the same design family as the Tu-16's original sea search equipment, but upgraded with modern signal processing that is used to locate and develop targeting solutions on surface targets. This radar's emission characteristics had been in the threat library, but the library entry had gaps, specifically the emission parameters during the active targeting phase, when the radar is generating fire control quality tracks on surface contacts at operational engagement ranges. Previous collection had captured the search mode and the early acquisition phase. The targeting phase had not been cleanly collected at close range in an operational configuration. From 13:14 through 14:47, the H-6K's targeting radar was active in progressive acquisition modes as the aircraft approached the battle group. The battle group's collection systems, the E-2D's onboard electronic intelligence suite, the SLQ-32 suites on the two destroyers and the cruiser, and the collection architecture managed by the intelligence warfare officer on the Reagan herself, recorded every emission across every mode transition for 93 minutes. The targeting phase characterization, which had been a collection gap for Pacific Fleet EW intelligence for 2 deployment cycles, was collected in complete detail during the 41 minutes between 14:06 and 14:47, when the H-6K was within its operational targeting range of the battle group and its radar was generating active fire control tracks. The YJ-12 targeting pods on the H-6K's external pylons had also been active. The pods carry electro-optical and radar sensors used to identify and classify surface targets before missile employment. From approximately 14:11, the targeting pods were emitting in their active sensor mode, the specific configuration used when an H-6K crew is developing the target picture for potential weapons employment. This is not an accusation that the crew intended to employ weapons. It is an observation that the pods were configured for the demonstration portion of the mission, and that their active emission modes produced a collection event that the battle group's intelligence architecture was specifically designed to capture. The YJ-12 targeting pod emission profile, frequencies, waveform characteristics, scan patterns, mode transitions, had been partially characterized from satellite-based collection over Chinese air bases during ground testing periods. Partial characterization is useful. Complete characterization and operational flight configuration, collected directly from active pods during a transit toward the target they were designed to engage, is considerably more useful. The intelligence warfare officer on the Reagan submitted a preliminary note on the pod collection at 16:30, approximately 90 minutes after the encounter. The note flagged the collection as the most complete direct characterization of the YJ-12 targeting pod in operational employment configuration that Pacific Fleet Intelligence had produced. He used the phrase, "most complete direct characterization," without modification or qualification. In the vocabulary of intelligence reporting, this phrase carries significant weight. The collection officer who received the note forwarded it with a priority flag. The H-6K crew had conducted their demonstration with professional skill. The navigation was precise. The sensor employment followed the planned sequence. The closest point of approach to the Reagan was within the parameters that made the political point Beijing required. From the crew's perspective, the mission was accomplished. They had flown to within striking range of a U.S. carrier battle group, activated their targeting systems, and returned home. The demonstration was complete. What they had not known for 94 minutes was that the demonstration had an audience that was not visible from the cockpit. The E-2D controller, who had been tracking them from 312 nautical miles. The intelligence warfare officer cataloging their target in pod emissions. The two F-35C pilots, who had spent 23 minutes reviewing the H-6K from 60 feet, with the patient professionalism of people who have been told to watch and wait and have no objection to waiting. The intelligence product from this afternoon's work took 4 days to process completely. The YJ-12 targeting pod characterization was incorporated into the updated threat library within 72 hours and distributed via the standard classification channels to every U.S. Navy air wing operating in the Western Pacific. The H-6K's targeting radar phase characterization filled the collection gap that 2 previous deployment cycles had identified. The battle group's 12 surface contact tracking picture during the 11-minute weather gap was incorporated into the coverage assessment for the Philippine Sea operating area, noting the specific convective geometry that created the gap and the conditions under which it would recur. At approximately 1900 Beijing time, CCTV broadcast footage from the H-6K sortie showing the aircraft in cruise configuration over open water with Reagan visible on the horizon. The footage was clearly filmed by the H-6K's own cameras, which the crew had operating throughout the mission. The presenter described the sortie as a successful long-range maritime patrol demonstrating plan aviation's ability to operate freely throughout the Western Pacific and its capacity to monitor U.S. naval forces at will. The YJ-12 missiles were visible on the wing pylons in several frames. The footage was well composed. The message, for its intended domestic and regional audience, was clear and effective. The footage did not include the 17 seconds during which 2 F-35Cs had been at 60 feet of separation from both sides of the H-6K simultaneously. Those 17 seconds were photographed by both F-35C pilots with their own sensor systems. The photographs showed the H-6K crew's faces in the cockpit at identification range. CCTV had one product from the afternoon. Pacific Fleet Intelligence had a different set of products. The YJ-12 targeting pod characterization was not on CCTV. The F-35C identification photographs were not on CCTV. The E-2D tracking spreadsheet, which had been updated with a new entry in the Anything New This Time column, was also not on CCTV. The lead F-35C pilot landed back aboard Reagan at 16:22. He ate dinner in the wardroom at 1800. His debrief had noted, in the section for contact behavior observations, that the H-6K crew had been conducting the sortie with professional discipline and that the demonstration had been executed precisely. He also noted, in the same section, that the crew had appeared to be unaware of the F-35C escort for the duration of the 23-minute proximity phase. He recorded this observation with the same factual neutrality he would use for any other debrief notation. It was accurate. It was also, to anyone who understood what 23 undetected minutes over the Philippine Sea means in the context of carrier air wing operations, the most significant line in the entire report. There is a specific cost calculation that this morning's accounting requires. Each F-35C costs approximately $100 million. Two F-35Cs flying a 94-minute escort mission in the Philippine Sea represent roughly $200 million in platform value used to watch an aircraft whose crew did not know it was being watched. This is a number that, stated plainly, sounds absurd. It is less absurd when you account for what the watching produced. The YJ-12 targeting pod characterization that the battle group's collection systems built during those 94 minutes will inform the development of countermeasures for a weapon that poses genuine risk to every surface combatant the U.S. Navy deploys to the Western Pacific. The cost of not having that characterization, measured in the alternative of a future engagement where the targeting pod's guidance parameters were unknown, is not a number that fits neatly in a budget column but is considerably larger than $200 million. The H-6K was a capable aircraft on a well-executed mission. The demonstration was real. The audience it did not know about was also real. Both will be at the next sortie. Bye for now.